Welcome to Mike Graham's Political Punch-Up. It's been a very, very busy week, and of course the one story in town is Russia and Ukraine. And so today's big question is, should we be sending troops into Ukraine to help fight Russia? I'm joined today by Belinda on the right and Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan on the left, which is not where he normally is, but we'll see which way they're going to go on this particular question. Kevin, give me 30 seconds on what you think.
Well, boots on the ground is a very terrifying prospect, but I certainly think right now we have to think about air support for Ukraine. And while the West backs off from that very frightening idea, Putin will up the ante. His atrocities will get worse and worse and worse. It reminds me of Kosovo, where the world watched for a month as the atrocities increased, and we saw those terrible images on the television. And in the end, we were motivated by sheer morality, a moral obligation to go in. So I do not think, while the financial sanctions so far have been impressive, in the end they will not be enough. And whether we like it or not, I think militarily we'll be going in, and the NATO nations will get involved, because if they don't, when he's finished with Ukraine, he'll go to Estonia. That's a NATO ally, and then we'll have to get involved. We might as well punch him in the face early rather than let him do his worst.
Belinda, is that right, or are you worried about his retaliation nuclear-wise?
Yeah, well, I'm worried about a lot of things. I'm 100% against sending troops, British troops, to the Ukraine for many reasons. Putin has been planning this war for about 15 years. In 2008, he went into Georgia and did the same thing. Oh, there are separatists there that need our help. The Russians went in and then they suddenly took over Georgia. He's doing exactly the same thing with Ukraine. Now, I think occupying Ukraine for Putin will be a huge problem in the long run. I think it will be the end of him. The body bags going back home, the amount of money it's going to cost Russia, I think he will end up derailing himself and ending himself with his grandeur vision of taking back his beauty, the breadbasket of Eastern Europe, which is the Ukraine. I think it will be his undoing. Unfortunately, terrible things happen. There are conflicts all over the world. And if we dare put our British troops in, it could start off, it could be the First World War trigger, if you know how that all, it's like falling down a hill and just gathering grass into this massive world war. We have spent years with our British men and women dying for other countries. I think, number one, we should ask them first, but think very carefully before we put one boot on the ground of a foreign country ever again. We should do cyber attacks, we should kill them economically, and see what happens after that.
Yeah, because, Kevin, what could happen if Britain was to join some kind of NATO force to go into Ukraine, or indeed start bombing bits of Russia or whatever it is? Suddenly that's a much bigger problem, isn't it, than just bombing Kosovo, which at the time didn't really have much of an ally behind them.
Yeah, no, I take the point, and I don't want World War III, but it may well be an inevitability, and this is our time to tell Putin, you think we're weak, we're not, we're tough, and we're going to stand up to you. And if you don't stand up to a bully, they carry on bullying, and we are going to watch terrible things on the telly over the next month. And in the end, all this discussions we're having, all the talk and all the West saying we're never going in, America assuring the world they'll never fight Russia, you wait, they'll have to.
But I don't think it's up to us to risk more lives.
It's
I don't
NATO,
think
it's NATO.
No, yeah, but still.
I'm not saying British go, we go in as part of NATO.
Yeah, but we're putting men and women's lives on the line. We're literally, killing our fellow countrymen for another country, because that is what will happen. The Russians are savage. Putin has armories that we can't even imagine. They have how many tanks? Tens of thousands of tanks.
NATO's got more nuclear weapons than that.
But nuclear has to be...
Yeah, but we don't have a nuclear war.
No, but I don't think it will escalate to that.
NATO's also militarily more powerful than
But
Russia.
I think it is a trigger. Russia and Putin, he's not in his right mind. I think he will retaliate in a way that will kill far more people. Think of 9/11.
Well, he's going to do that anyway.
9/11 killed 3,000 people. It was horrific, and we watched in horror. The response to 9/11 killed 1 million people. Yeah. Now, whatever you feel about it, it escalated to the point where we need to learn lessons from history, and we need to calculate how many lives are we prepared to kill, to risk, to help a country that it could fizzle out in the end. We just need to wait a little bit longer. Horrible horrible things are going to happen. We can't help that. We should send in people on the ground, like UN hospital workers to help care.
Don't send the UN in.
Well, or we have
Well, the
many
thing
other
is, that, the
options.
thing
We
is,
don't
in
have to send
Bosnia,
troops.
they had a UN
this is
peace.
appeasement.
But
This
they had a UN peacekeeping force in Bosnia because they had to try and keep the people apart. They had to try and stop them from fighting one another. And that actually, although it didn't happen very quickly, it did work in the end, and they did eventually come to the table and sign a deal. And I don't think with Russia being Russia, which is a much bigger and much different situation, say, than whatever was going on in former Yugoslavia, I think Belinda's right that you can't suddenly just say, right, we're going to come in and go after you,
It's not about
you're dealing with somebody who's got a lot more firepower than anything anybody's ever seen.
It doesn't. If NATO go in, he doesn't have more firepower than NATO.
No, but he does have it though. Whether he uses it or
Got
not,
a lot, but he doesn't have more.
No, but he has a lot. Is my
But
point.
I don't think we can inflict World War III on Europe. I don't think we
Well,
have the right to do that.
It might not be our choice. It might not be our choice.
I
We
think
cannot just cower to this guy. But
we're not cowering,
We're a
though.
bit worried about
But
the.
when
But
you
I
say-
don't think we are cowering, and I think we can do many more things.
Let me tell you, this is
Intelligence
academic.
services-
We will be going in. We will be going in because he is going to make things worse and worse and worse. And when he's finished with Ukraine, he'll go to Estonia. So, as I say, if you stand up to a bully, you might as well do it early. I don't want to see that. I'm not really talking about boots on the ground. I'm talking about NATO getting involved. I think we will be clearing the airspace for Ukraine, and once that happens, the chances are we'll end up knocking a Russian jet out of the sky, and then it all kicks off.
And
I
then
just
Russia
don't think.
fires
there again,
missiles
I
at
just
London.
don't think it's avoidable.
Yeah. Well, they could.
So
I don't
I'm
think
not
it's
signing
avoidable.
I'm not signing British lives off on this. What I think is really important, there are many other
Well, it's not
options.
British- it's not just
we can
British
put
lives.
No, but if we get involved, it's separate from the EU, it will be us acting independently with NATO as opposed to the rest of Europe. But I do think there are many other options. We can send special forces into Russia. What about taking the old dough face out? Has anyone ever thought of that?
I think plans are well afoot for that.
Right.
But
What
it's
about-
difficult to get to dictators at times like this. Ask Adolf Hitler.
No.
Well, the best way
and
to
that's
get
what
to
we've
them.
got on our hands here. We have a Hitler on our hands.
Yeah, but the best way to get to somebody like Putin, surely, is to get somebody on the inside who thinks that maybe he's now going too far. Because I think there are people in Moscow who think we don't actually want to become the pariah of the world. We don't want to be the sort of Northern European version of North Korea. We actually quite like having a McDonald's in Moscow. We quite like having a Nike shop and a place where you can go and buy, your Armani perfume. And I think those are the people we should appeal to.
But
the
I
Russian
don't
people
think
are not
those
behind
forces.
Putin.
I think you're right, Mike. Absolutely. Western life is all about comfort and luxury,
Yeah.
and everybody likes that, especially Russians.
Maybe the wokists could go there and help them out and say,
Yeah,
look,
well,
become more woke.
Yeah.
And then you won't have to worry about Putin anymore.
But it's not. In the end, it's not about. Those forces will only come into play after Putin falls. So if Ukraine fails for him, he will be ejected from the Kremlin, just like Khrushchev was after the Cuban Missile Crisis. So he took Russia all the way through that crisis and emerged with his dignity and the dignity of Russia intact, as did America with this very careful agreement. He lasted about 3 more days after that, gone.
Right.
And that's what will happen to Putin if he fails in Ukraine or if he fails in Estonia. If he bites off too much, more than he can chew, he will be defenestrated by the
And I think
Kremlin.
that's what he's done.
But he has to fail first.
Yes, no, I get that. But the fact is, you won't fail him by fighting him. Because you will only fail him if
He
he
has
gets
to
the
fail on his
tactics
own.
wrong. If he gets beaten, the Russians might actually rally round him. So if you actually use military might to defeat him, then he stays in.
So we just let him go ahead.
Well, I think we let him get to a point where he has to make that choice. And if he really chooses to wage war on the rest of the world, that's when you retaliate.
But if
I don't think he will choose.
He's already said to have let off one thermobaric weapon, a vacuum missile.
Well, we haven't seen that, have we? We don't know if that's true.
He's accused of using one in Kiev, and also he's cluster bombed Kharkiv. If he ups the ante on that, particularly thermobaric weapons, I mean, tens of thousands of innocent civilians, including thousands of women and children, are going to die. And
Well, if he does
I
that-
don't believe we will sit by and let that happen.
But I don't think you can go to war on a maybe. This is
No.
why I don't even
Well,
think
no,
this is
when
the
it
whole point.
happens.
Well, this is how awful things are. When something like that happens, say, for example, if Zelensky is killed in one of the bombings, if the martyr, the man of the people out there on the ground gets killed by the Russian troops, I think you will find many more people across Europe going and joining Ukraine army and fight. It will change the picture
and that will change
completely.
everything. So at this
And
moment
there
in
is a
time,
risk.
I
He
don't
could
think
easily be
I don't
killed.
think the Foreign Legion of Ukraine will change everything at all.
No, I think the people who join it from
Yeah, but
Europe,
that
I
won't
think
be
there's
enough. That won't be enough.
making a
There'll be
martyr out of Zelensky.
It's a good story on the telly, but it's not really very significant.
well, I'm going to have to give you my verdict, which is always, as ever, neutral.
I know which way you're leaning. I can tell.
You can't always tell which way I'm leaning, but on this particular occasion, I'm going to go against Kevin O'Sullivan because he's just a warmonger, quite
A
frankly.
warmonger.
You know, he's been predicting World War III for about a week now, and I think he's only doing it now so he doesn't get proved wrong. So I'm going to give the win to Belinda de Lucy, far more wise, a far more cool head in a crisis.
You don't have to overkill
it's
Belinda. Just give it to her.
Thanks,
Don't-
Mike.
It's 1 to Belinda de Lucy, 0 to Kevin O'Sullivan, the warmonger. This is the Political Punch-Up. We'll see you next time.